Hello friends, welcome back to Aunt Debbie's Boutique. I'm real excited about our project today. It is a plaid quilt. It's actually called Plaid Cake and it's by Cluck Cluck Sew. I've never sewn one of their patterns before, but this popped up in my feed on social media and I just had to have it. And reading through this, I am very, very impressed with the quality of the instructions. This one tells you which way to iron all your seams, and I like that. I can figure out how to iron my seams, but it kind of hurts my head thinking about what seam it's going to cross and all that. So I appreciate it when somebody does the work for me. So far, I highly recommend this pattern. Okay, I used layer cakes. It could be a layer cake or fat quarters or scraps. And I used some leftovers from a K Facet layer cake. And if you're familiar with his fabrics, they're very bright, almost to the point of being gaudy. And it took me a while to appreciate it, but now I really like his stuff. And so I make a lot of quilts with his fabrics in it. Now, I had enough left over to do a baby quilt. And so that's what we're going to do with this. I do have enough to probably make a throw if I wanted to. So I could add on to it if when I get it done, it's not as big as I would like. So we'll see, but we're going to just make the crib one here today. Now, I have, to save time and confusion and all that, I've gone ahead and cut out all the pieces and I've sorted them. But basically what you do is you take your layer cakes and it tells you in here how to cut them so you get all these colored pieces out of each layer cake. And I can't tell you what those sizes are because that would be infringing on their pattern. I will put a link to buying this pattern down below, and you can, if you want to follow along, you can, or make your own. It's real easy to follow the instructions of how to cut up that layer cake. Once you have cut up your pieces, then you're going to select certain pieces and put it in pile A and select the rest of them and put them in pile B. For instance, this, and this, and this were in pile A. Pile B is this, this, and this. And there is a pile B of this same fabric somewhere down below. So I had a bunch of pile A's and a bunch of pile B's. And then I paired them together. In each block, you're only going to have two fabrics besides your background squares. So I sorted them so none of them were the same fabrics together. Now I hope that makes sense. But I've got them all laid out now in the order we're going to put them together. And I hope I can keep everything in order so that my squares all come out in the end. But I thought long and hard about what was the easiest way to put this together and to explain it. And I still think that doing chain stitching is going to be the way to go. So what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to take and put these, I don't know if that's totally in the camera range or not. Let me kind of move it a little bit this way to see. These three, sew these three together. So I will put right sides together. So this one, and then this one, but I'm going to do it in a chain, and I've got all of these in the specific order so I can't get them out of order. When it's done, I want to be able to clip them apart and leave them in that order so they stay in order with the other pieces. After I sew these two together, I'll add this one to it. Then we will iron towards the squares on this one. I believe that's right. Let me double check that. Press the seams toward the squares. And once we've done that, we're gonna sew this to it, this pile to it. So let's go to the sewing machine and get started on this. Now that I've sewn both of the white squares on, I'm going to cut these apart, and I'm going to be careful to keep them in order. That is the most important part when you're chain stitching this particular quilt, is keeping it in order. And I'll show you how you can check that in just a minute. Now I'm going to press each one, set the seam, but I'm going to press them away from the center block. Now I use steam. I also have some Mary Ellen's Best Press in here that I starched all my, or it's a starch alternative, but I starched all my fabric before I cut it out, and I've always done it that way. But there's some people who say dry iron only and no starch because it can shrink your fabric. I've never had a problem. So got extra string there. You do whatever you feel is best. I just love having a nice crisp seam. So I'm an ironaholic. My iron has a mind of its own a lot of times. Okay, We have these all lined and they're ironed and they're in the right order because I've got the same print here. Now, if you want to double check to make sure they're in the same order, you can find another stack that is the A group, and you can just flip through it real quickly and make sure you've got the same fabrics in the same order. Now, I'm not going to take the time to do that right now, and I hope I don't regret that, but that's the hardest. It's not hard. That's the most important part if you're going to chain these. Now, you could sew one block at a time. It would take a lot longer, but if that makes you happier, then do it that way. So now we're going to, with right sides together, sew this piece on. And let's see which way we iron that. I forgot to look. Okay, we're going to press the seam towards this background strip unit on these. So I'm going to take both of these over to the machine and keep them in order and sew this next seam. Now I'm going to always put this strip unit on top so I can make sure that my seams lay the way I ironed them. Okay, once again, I'm going to cut these apart, keeping them in order. Okay, now then, I should have flipped those the other way, but I'll do it as I iron them. Okay. We're going to set that seam. Whoa, no. We want to do it like this. And we want to press the seam towards our background strip. So each time I'm going to flip that on top. And setting our seam just sets those stitches down in there nicely. And then everything will lay much smoother. Okay, I'm going to stack them a little neater here, but as you can see, we have the polka dots here and this print here. So at least the top one's in the right place, and I feel pretty certain all of them are, since I kept them in order. The only screw up would be if when I was sorting them, I got something out of order. Okay, we've got this corner done. Now we're going to move up here to this one. I guess it's down there for you. And we're going to take this over to the machine and we're going to sew this strip, and then we'll sew this strip to our strip unit. This time we're going to iron this seam towards the fabric print, not the background square. So let's take these over to the sewing machine and sew that. Now that I've sewn those together, I'm going to cut them apart and make sure I keep them in the proper order. Now that I've cut them all apart, I'm going to iron the seam towards the strip, not the background square, so I want it on top. I'll press the seam, or set the seam, and then press it open. And again, it's very important that I keep these in order. Okay, those are done. We move my ironing board and put them back where they belong, right here. And we do have the right one on top because it matches the other ones that are the part B group. Now I want to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew it to here. But how I'm going to do it is turn these upside down on it to sew. That way I can catch my iron to seam and make sure it's going the right way. So let's take these over to the machine and sew it. Okay, I have a problem because I'm not coming out with the right number of strips. So let me stop and find, I probably have 2 strips together somewhere. Let me fix that. I found the problem. The very first strip was stuck to the back of my ironing board when I laid it on top of everything. So that means I have to rip out every single one of these and get the first strip in line correctly. That does not make me happy. So we're going to take a break, or you're going to take a break while I rip all these out and resew them. I don't think you need to watch me resew them all again. And then I'll meet you back at the ironing board when they're all correct. And next time I'll know to check the back of the ironing board. I'm back, and hopefully all my blocks are correct this time. So I'm going to start cutting them apart and keeping them in order. And we're going to press to the strip side this time. So I want it on front, on top, and I'm going to lay the seam away from me so it'll be easier to cut them apart. I mean, to iron them. When I make mistakes like that, usually it's because I'm trying to get something done real quick before I go do something else, like start dinner or laundry. I think, I'll just sew this one last seam and then I'll go do this. In times like that, it's best to just lay it aside and walk away when you make a mistake and come back later. My dad used to always say, if you don't have time to do something right, when are you going to have time to do it again? And that's the situation when I get in a hurry. So I lay it aside then. But times like today, I know I better stop right then and fix it, or I'm liable to lay it aside indefinitely. And that's most of the time. If I'm not trying to get away to do something else, I know I better fix it right then and there. So let's finish cutting these apart, get them ironed, and then the good news is we'll be halfway done with our block, or kind of halfway done. We'll have two blocks sewn together of the 4. Okay, check the back, and sure enough, there was a piece of fabric stuck to the back of my ironing board. Lesson learned. Let's hope that doesn't happen again. Okay, here's this corner done. And I know at least the top one's right because I've got the polka dots where I need them, and I've got this green floral where it needs to be. Now let's tackle this one. What we're going to do here is I'm going to chain these all the way through and then come back and chain this on the other side of it. I'm going to do the same with this down here. So I'm just going to do this, this, and this, and do them all at one time. Now, as long as they're in order, and I hope they are now, this should go real smoothly, and we'll have, all we'll have to do is insert this piece and we'll have another 1/4 of the block done. So let's go over to the sewing machine and do that. Okay, now that I have these strips all done, I'm gonna flip through the pile till I find this green with blue polka dot again, because that's where it starts over. Right there. And I'm gonna separate them into 2 piles. Get rid of my ironing board. Nothing stuck to it this time. Put this stack here. Now, when I start back up here at the top, I want to make sure when I lay this on here that I have the same block. That way I can catch any mistakes before I have to back up and rip out. Now this quarter of the block is done. So we have these 3 pieces, we just lack this top corner. And by now you've probably got the hang of how we sandwich these in. I'll take these 2 over, sew them, then I'll go back to the top and sew this one here. And I'll iron those seams the direction it tells me in the pattern. And once we have that strip unit done, we'll sew it to this strip here, with this strip unit being on top so I can check my seams as I go. So I'll go sew this last block together and then we'll look at putting all 4 of them together. Finish the last block on all of these, and now it's time to put them together to make our big blocks. So the first thing I'm going to do is sew this pile to this pile. Then I'll sew this pile to this pile. Then we'll sew the 2 together. Now, this is going to be where the rubber meets the road. We're going to have to make sure with each one of them we have the same fabrics. That one we do. Yes, and yes. That one we do. So as we go, we're going to have to check those. And if we have different fabrics, we've messed up somewhere. Let's hope that isn't the case here. Okay, I'm going to take the first rows over to the sewing machine and sew them together. And we are going to press them this way to the smaller side. Now that the top's done, I'm going to take this pile over and sew it together. Now we're ready for the last seam before we lay out our blocks. So I'm going to just flip this over this, and I want to make sure that I line up my seams here on this stripe going down there. The rest of it, I have all my blocks put together, and I have arranged them from the darkest, like the blues and darker greens, to the medium greens, to the light greens. When I paired these up with an A and B print, I tried to match the same basic colors because I had in my head that then I could sort this in kind of an ombre effect. And now that seems kind of silly because this is a baby quilt. It's not really big enough for very much ombre, but that's what I did, and we're going to try it. And if I don't like it, we'll switch some of the blocks around. So the way you lay this out, it's going to be 4 by 5. This block with this long strip right here, and then the small one right there is at the top. And so I've got all of my blocks laying that way. The next one, we turn. Okay, I've got my block wrong. That's what goes at the top. Yeah. Okay, so every other block is turned 90 degrees. So if I take this and turn it 90 degrees. Now on the next row, we're going to start with it turned a negative 90 degrees. And then we're going to turn it upside down. Negative 90 degrees. Upside down. Okay, I need to move these up so I can get all 5 rows here. This could be a pretty good size baby blanket. This one is turned wrong. This one is turned wrong. No? There we go. Do you want to take odds on me getting all of these on here the right direction and then sewing them the right direction? We'll see. I've been told if you take a picture with your cell phone, we're going back to the first row. So if you take a picture on your cell phone, that the problems will stick out. So I'm going to try that this time before I start sewing any of it. Okay, on the next row, then I turn it to negative 90. And upside down. -90, and upside down. So this one is right side up. +90. Right side up, +90. Let me kind of turn the camera down a little bit so maybe you can see all of it. And I actually kind of like this ombre look, even though it's not a real big quilt, but it just kind of has that gradual change. Now, I'd probably like it if it was all mixed up too, but I think I'm going to leave it like this. And I am going to search for any mistakes before I start putting it together. And then I will take one row at a time, and I will sew according to each seam, putting them together. I'll iron the first row all to the right. The next row I'll put together, and I'll iron the seams all to the left, right, left, right. Now we have lots of seams to match. We've got the seams on the big stripes and the little stripes on both sides, plus our corners. So we have to pay real close attention to all that for it to come out right. But it shouldn't give us too much trouble, because thanks to the people who wrote the pattern, our seams are ironed so that they shouldn't conflict. That one looked like it did. Let me see. Okay, that one didn't. I may have this turned wrong, so I'll check that. But see, these seams are ironed in. These are ironed out on that, so they should nest just fine. Okay, I'm going to go put it together, and then I'll show you the end result. And this is our finished Plaid cake quilt top. This pattern doesn't call for a border, and I don't know if I think the binding will be enough for the border. So I really enjoyed making this quilt. It was all straight seams, no half square triangles, no flying geese. It just went, and it went together beautifully. It looks, to me anyway, it looks very complicated, but it's not. And it can get a little confusing at times. And I did have one block right up here at the top that was turned the wrong way, even after I checked and double checked and everything. And I didn't catch it until I sewed the second row, went to sew the second row on, so I had to rip that out and fix that. But otherwise, it went together. My seams matched up pretty good. I had one place that gave me a little trouble, but that was because I had taken too big of a seam allowance on one of the blocks, and I just fixed that, and it went together beautifully. So I highly recommend this pattern, Plaid Cake by Cluck Cluck Sew. You can make it out of layer cakes or fat quarters, and I used layer cakes and a background fabric. The instructions in here are wonderful. They are so easy to follow. Now, if you were a little confused in the beginning about how I got everything sorted, I'm going to tack a little clip on the end of this video that shows me cutting and sorting the blocks, so maybe that will make it a little easier for you to see. If you're not confused about it, you don't have to watch that part. So if you enjoyed this, would you please like, subscribe, share, comment, anything like that helps me. I really appreciate it. And I may end up quilting this myself. I usually take most of my good quilts to a long arm quilter, but that can get kind of expensive. And I'm wanting to do a little more of it myself. I haven't decided whether I want to free motion quilt it or if I want to just quilt with the lines. And but if I decide to do this, I'll bring you along with me, and you can watch me quilt it. I do owe you a video on free motion quilting because I did never finish that one due to my sewing machine breaking. So thank you for joining me today, and remember, whatever you do, do it to the glory of the Lord. Stay tuned if you want to see me cut and sew cut and sort some of these blocks. Okay, here's a quick little tutorial on how to cut and sort the squares for our quilt. First of all, I just found 4 scrap layer cakes, and I trimmed off, they were a little more than 10 inches, so I trimmed off what I could of the edge on all of these because I don't like all that zigzagging stuff. I never know where my seam allowance is. Okay, these are pieces. See, I didn't get cut completely apart. I cut 4 of them at once here. Here's some pieces, here's some pieces. This is trash. And this down here is trash. Not trash, goes into a good scrap pile. This and these 2 were scraps. And then I have some corner squares. Now there's an A. I separate all these into an A pile and a B pile. So I take all of these. This is going in A. I take these. It's going in A. And one of these is going in A, and one of these is going in A. Then the B pile is this, 2 of these, and this. Now, I'm going to take the top one off of each of these. Actually, I'm going to take the top 2 off because that's more of a contrast and it'll be easier for you to see. Okay, so here's my A pile, here's my B pile. And I will take the top one of each one of these. I'm gonna kind of move that out of the way. Well, I don't even know if I've got this centered in the camera. I'm sorry. Okay, here's my A pile for my first block, and this is going to be my B pile. And they have this color coded. I can't let you see the measurements, but it's all color coded so you know which goes in the A pile, which goes in the B pile. We'll push those out of the way. Now I have our first block, and I also need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 square of the background squares. So I probably won't have enough background squares for all of these. Then I'm going to do this B piece, then this. I'm looking at a picture while I'm doing this. I'm not doing this off the top of my head. Then I need an A piece, okay, I need another A piece down here. Then a B piece going this way. An A piece there. Get all of this so you can see it. Okay, that's my first layer. Now my second layer, I'm going to put my A pieces right on top. Put the A pieces before, and then my B pieces. Okay, I think I stuck two pieces together here. Yep. Yep. There we go. Okay, now for my third row, I'm going to take all these A pieces and put them where the little B's were before. Boy, these are sticking together on me. Where the B's were, where the B's were. Then I'm going to take my B blocks and put them where all the black ones were. Okay, for my next row, this will be my last one. I'll put the black where these paisley looking prints are, because that's where all the A ones go. And then I'm going to put that's not right. See, I get confused when I get on here. I had two stuck together again there. Okay. Yes, now where all these beehive ones are. These prints are too similar. It's best if you have ones that aren't as similar. Okay, there. And of course I will have as many white squares or background squares as I need in all these columns too. Now we're ready to put it together. I hope that made a little better sense on how to sort them so that each layer, which will make up our block, only has two fabrics in it. But there's a very good illustrated picture in the book that will help you in the pattern. So I just wanted to show you how I stacked them so I could be able to chain them. Of course, you can always sew one block at a time. It will take you a lot longer, but if it's too confusing the other way, it might not take you a lot longer if you have to rip out and have things wrong. So you choose the method you want to do it, but I like to show people a way to make a quilt in a shorter amount of time and make it simpler. So the sorting is the hard part. The rest of it is very simple. Thank you for joining me and watching this little tail end of this tutorial, and I'll see you next week.